Hey everyone, I'm Larry Walsh, and this is Changing Channels. Enterprises are spending more and more money on technology through hyperscalers, specifically through the hyperscaler marketplaces. And it's easy to understand why. Is that the marketplaces, the hyperscalers have turned themselves into banks. The way that businesses buy their cloud services is through long-term commitments. And the difference between their utilization and what their commitments are becomes flexible spend. The hyperscalers allow the customers to buy third-party applications through their marketplaces to satisfy their spending commitments. And why not? Because the more that they put into their clouds, the more committed the customer is to staying with them. So it works out for everybody. Now, over the years, the hyperscalers have developed programs so that they can do co-selling with vendors. They develop private offer mechanisms so that partners can sell in and capitalize on the opportunity. But finding success isn't easy. Getting set up, building the business, getting the cultural change within the sales organizations, getting partners to come in and to sell through the hyperscalers, to bring their customers in and get over the risk of conflict. That's all very hard. And a lot of vendors stumble through this process and they have to overinvest or they get frustrated with it. Now, because the growing success of selling through hyperscalers is becoming unavoidable. In fact, Channelnomics research tells us that by the end of the decade, 2030, 2031, businesses will prefer to source technology through marketplaces and hyperscalers because they just want that level of convenience. So this is drawing more vendors and more partners into the process, but it still takes a lot of effort and a lot of planning. And one company that has found a real high level of success is New Relic. Now, this observability company has recently exceeded $1 billion in sales to the AWS Marketplace, and they're doubling down. They've created a global co-sell team to help expand the process and accelerate the attainment of the next $1 billion. So to find out how they did it and how they're going to do it again, we invited Shannon Batson, the channel sales director at New Relic and also the head of this global co-sell team, to come explain to us what New Relic is doing to find success with AWS. I'm Larry Walsh. This is Changing Channels. Let's get into it. Shannon Batson, welcome to Changing Channel.
Hey, Larry, great to be here.
Oh, it's great to have you. So look, I want to dive right into this because you and New Relic have a really good story here to tell. So you've been selling through the AWS Marketplace for a while, like a lot of other companies, but you've achieved a pretty significant milestone of $1 billion in sales through a hyperscaler. What does that milestone represent beyond just a revenue number itself? What's the significance of that for you and your partners?
Yeah, great question. Yeah, we're really excited about it. So hitting that $1 billion milestone just really solidifies our partnership with AWS and then also like going to market with other like value added resellers as well. So we're excited to double down here.
Yeah. So how does this relationship evolve? Because let's set the stage here. As I said in the introduction, the customers are driving this movement, this shift into hyperscalers. They're the ones that are being drawn in by the economics and the convenience of it. But how has this evolved? How did New Relic get started with AWS? And what was the evolution of this relationship getting up to this milestone over the past couple of years?
Yeah, I would say it's still evolving, right? So lots of good stuff to come. But like most, it started small and it started very reactive, just as a place to get marketplace customers were requesting it. Kind of came at the end of the transaction, right? So we'd get kind of the end of the sales cycle, and the customer would say, "Hey, I've got a commitment with AWS. I want to run this through marketplace." So where we've seen it evolve is now we are being much more proactive with this approach and actually truly co-selling with the AWS teams. And something really exciting about where we are today is as of April 1, which is our fiscal start of our year, I am now leading a global co-sell team dedicated to co-sell. So that signifies a big shift in the way that New Relic is going to market as well and how we're viewing this partnership.
It's interesting you talk about it like that because that seems to be a common experience, that this is sort of like These hyperscaler relationships often started, at least over the past a few years ago, started as like a lab experiment.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, let's try it. Let's do our listings. Let's get set up in here, and we'll see what happens. And just the other day, I was having a conversation with somebody who's going through this process now, and he was saying to me, he goes, "Yeah, maybe we'll get something out of it." And then it turns. So what was that turn? What was that inflection point for you that you said, okay, this is more than a curiosity. This is now strategic and is
Yeah.
becoming the intent that leads to you actually leading this global team.
Yeah, I think it's again, it's still turning, but I think what we see in the marketplace is our customers are viewing it more strategic as well, right? As they get deeper and wider within AWS and their partnerships with them, then we start working with our biggest customers and start working with the AWS team to say, hey, if we work together with these customers, we can provide more value and bring better solutions to the market. So I think that's the inflection point. And we're seeing that across the board today because I think, and most ISVs can probably relate to this. You've got a ton of marketplace deals, but how many of them you're actually truly co-selling on? And that's where we're turning the corner to say, yeah, it's not just about marketplace. And that's not what this is about. This is about bringing value to the customers and bringing value to the marketplace. And we do that by co-selling with the AWS team and with other partners. We love being in that triangle of it's us, VAR, and AWS all bringing value to the customers.
It's interesting you talk about that being a triad. And for the beginning of this hyperscaler journey for a lot of companies, there that really wasn't the case. Yes,
Yeah.
Amazon's had their private offers programs for a number of years, but it was typically a lot of complaints from the partners that would come in and say, "Well, we nurtured the deal all the way up to the close, and then the customer flipped it over to a marketplace or to a hyperscaler, and we lost out." And your people, not yours specifically, but your sellers didn't quite know what to do with that either. To them, they also faced that type of, well, is that a win lose scenario?
Right.
So what was it like internally going from that beginning of, well, we're not quite sure what to do with this, to creating that co-sell mentality, that culture that actually embraces this?
Yeah. So I think a couple of things, because number one, we've seen the triad approach change over probably the past 18 to 24 months. When I first started at New Relic, a lot of my conversations with the bars were kind of around like, hey, we probably prefer not to go through Marketplace because there was this feeling of we lose control over our customers or we lose the relationship or anything along those lines. And I've seen a lot of those concerns, especially as we've proved this out this motion, that a lot of those concerns have been alleviated and the
Mhm.
value is there. And so it's really driving more of the triad approach. And then if you look at like our internal sellers, of course we all, experience the channel conflict and always are up against some sort of fashion of that,
Right.
right? It's always that they're on our side. But when we start producing a culture that understands the value of this, there's a few things that I have noticed. We can go around as a channel team or as a co-sell team and try to win over the hearts and minds of each AE or each first line manager individually. But what we have done and are in the process of executing on right now is it's the day-to-day operations, right? That get the AEs to say and think about the value of co-sell early and often. Are they asking about an AWS PPA commit? Are they asking about those cloud commits during discovery? So they understand the entire picture of the landscape of the ecosystem and the customer from the beginning of the process instead of learning it 6, 9 months down the road, which is historically where we've been. So if we change a lot of those operational things to make sure that they're included in every step of the sales process, it immediately changes the culture. They start seeing the value. And then we get to like an inflection point like we are here, where our whole go to market approach is changing.
I mentioned this is that about the customer. The customers are the ones really driving this. The research we have says that by 2030, 2031, hyperscalers and marketplaces are going to be the preferred sourcing medium for the customers. I mean, we're already seeing it today
Yeah.
that the customers are overcommitting on their AWS or their Microsoft Azure spend so that they will have that buffer in place that they can
Yeah.
use for things like buying a new Relic. I think it's smart what you just said is that getting them to ask about it upfront. Do you have these commits? Where are you in your spend? To be able to treat it like money in the bank. Is
Yeah.
that really, is that a shift in mentality? Because oftentimes talking with salespeople, they often express the challenge of it's always difficult to find the budget
Yeah.
that's aligned with the customer. But now with the hyperscaler, you have a known budget already.
Right. And I wouldn't say it's a silver bullet, but it's a heck of a lot better than trying to get your own budget. Right.
Mhm. Yeah.
And I think it also proves as a seller, which, I kind of grew up as a seller, as an AE, as a first line manager. It helps you prove out that you're thinking about their entire ecosystem and all parts of their organization and where they have commitments, and realize letting the customer realize that you're not just worried about, your own agenda, that you're trying to understand them holistically.
Mm. Now you mentioned the value add that the partners bring. What exactly are your partners doing if the transaction's happening through a hyperscaler? And yes, you're doing it through a private offer so that they're getting credit and they're getting paid on it. But what is the role that they have to actually makes this more advantageous for them to be engaged with you in the co-selling motion?
Yeah, great question. So a lot of our partners also have services too, right? And so, if you look at observability in most ISVs, services are a huge component of that. And so that's really where we see that value come in is we've got relationships on the partner side, with one part of the organization, and they've got services that could back that up. We've got relationships from the AWS side that are a little bit different, right? And then New Relic has different relationships. So again, being able to see the whole picture of the customer versus just one vantage point, that's where we see the value coming in from all aspects of it.
Mm. So I'm going to share with you an old complaint I've had. So people who've known me for years know that I started off in security. And I remember in the old days, and yes, when I say old, I mean I remember dial up. So, but the
I do too, by
carriers,
the way. I do too.
um, the carriers though, we used to complain, because remember 25 years ago, it wasn't uncommon to have a tunnel fire take out, the internet to the Northeast. Um, and all that traffic, they were doing virtually nothing on their peering points to screen out the hacking or the background noise. I
Right.
kind of have the same complaint of the hyperscalers, you know, that they're asking us to put our applications, our data, our workloads up into their infrastructure. Oh, but by the way, our security isn't guaranteed. Now, mind you, that's a complaint from my side as a consumer of
Right.
services. But as a channel guy and as a person who builds sales models, I can tell you as I look at this and I say, well, that's the opportunity for you in New Relic. The observability is critically important. And I'm really curious to hear from your perspective, or at least or in your experience, what role does observability play in the helping partners remain relevant, particularly as more of this business and more of these applications are going up into hyperscalers?
Yeah, great question. It's something that we talk about a lot. Outside of like AI and cloud, observability has become a top three spend for all customers, right? Because
Mm,
you get these more complex environments. It's more important to be able to have that viewpoint into everything to see how everything's impacting each other, and that's
mm,
what we hear from the marketplace, day in and day out. Just, recently, we talk about like SAP, and we were just at Sapphire recently as well. That was a huge discussion topic. It's like we need to be able to see everything inside and outside of our SAP environment. How can we do that? And that's
mhm.
a huge vantage point of New Relic that we've been focused on. But it is top of mind for most customers, in the market today.
All right, so let's get into some specifics. Selling it. It's like everything. You look at the brochure, everything looks easy. Like I said, put a listing up on the AWS Marketplace, and money just starts rolling in. Not exactly that easy. So,
So
what were some of the operational challenges, or some of the things you had to adjust in order to first even just get started, much less achieve the level of success that you're having now?
Yeah. Yeah. If you look at a lot of organizations that have historically done things direct and not through the channel, a lot of times there's not the operational rigor in place to even track or ask about or um, be able to transact with those partners, and that was probably historically where New Relic was as well. And so I think it's really about just getting the basics right first, right? We don't have to overcomplicate this. We need to be asking simple questions about our both our hyperscalers and our partners from a VAR standpoint too. Who do they prefer to procure through? Right? Is that the marketplace? Is that one of the LARs out there? Is that somebody else? Everybody has their preference for procurement, and they have different relationships with the GSIs. And I think that getting all of the operational aspects and asking those questions in your CRM is key because then it opens up your visibility into as a channel person, as a partner person, on where we can go to add value to the sale, right? Where we can guide our sellers to go, how we can help them with those relationships. Are half of our customers using Accenture or Deloitte? Like, let's go find that information out. And I've seen it
Mhm.
time and time again where those questions aren't being asked or they're not being tracked. Let's say it like that. They may be being asked, but then it lives in some seller's head for the next 6 months. And we, as a channel organization or even a CXO, have no idea where to focus if we don't have that data. So I think it's starting with those basic blocking and tackling and just capturing that information early and often, and then being able to operationalize other reports and other dashboards to function from there.
I've talked with the hyperscalers frequently and the people who run the co-sell programs for them, whether it's
Yep.
Microsoft or AWS. And um, it's been fun watching that evolution on that side too.
Yeah.
When they first started doing this, it really was a bit of a curiosity for them as well. It's like, oh yeah, we can do this. And sure. And then they were doing the co-selling and their sellers were getting credit. And then all of a sudden it just started taking off to the point now where the sellers for the hyperscalers, they're carrying really heavy bags
Yeah.
because there is so much money that's going through them that they're not looking at small deals and they
Mhm.
are carrying very big numbers. So what's it like for you, New Relic, and your partners to get the attention of the AWS sellers so that they're also engaging to support you?
Yeah, that's a great question. So we have done a lot of work around this and we continue to do so is really having to enable our sales team on when and how to have these discussions with AWS, right? So, in general, and this is not even specific to New Relic, but if you go into an AWS account manager or AE and want to take out your competition, like, and you have no relationships there, like, what value are you bringing to that conversation? None, right? So they're going to tell you to go kick rocks and go on to the next thing. They have so many things to do. um, so we coach our sellers to have the conversation and bring value to the table. So we're bringing value to the table, they're bringing value to the table. Can we trade, relationship, strategic initiatives of the customer, like how can we help each other grow in this account versus just, hey, can you do something for me? And so that's how we coach the team and we continue to do so. It's different. We've got, expansion team, sales team, and we have acquisition sales team. So those messaging and trainings are very different depending on the seller and what they're going after.
It's interesting. There's still so much in. I guess now we can start talking about the legacy channel where when people ask me about how does the channel work, and I said, well, you ever see that Seinfeld episode where George is selling PCs out of his father's garage? Picking up the phone, hey, you want to buy a computer? Slam. It's like, and I hear that from partners too, where they'll say, yeah, my rep calls me up. What do you got for me? What
Mm.
you're describing is not just a different model. It's a different mindset.
Mhm.
And it's got to be difficult, or it had to have been a little bit difficult, at least in the beginning, to get your people to think in more of a strategic mindset than just a transactional one.
Yeah, completely. And when I started here, that was exactly discussion, right?
Mhm.
As I mentioned, starting as an AE, and I'll go back to my days at IBM when I ran my territory, like I had my 5 or 6 preferred partners and we were lockstep. every single deal. I don't think I had one deal that didn't have a partner engaged from, beginning to end, right? And that's how I was able to be successful, and I learned that, from early in my career, and I carried that through. So I'm always looking to bring that experience and those lessons to, our sales team to say, "Look, listen, there's a lot going on in your account that you don't know about. These partners are in there, whether you know it or not, and influencing your deal, whether you know it or not. You're much better going hand in hand and being more strategic about this and partnering with our partners on your deals. You're going to be far more successful, and it gets them over that feeling of they're losing control over their deal, right? So once they start having those positive experiences, it builds, and then the good reps see it. And then that's how they end up being the top reps in the company too, right?
Yeah. There's also, look, if you're in sales, then you know that fear is that thing you feel in the pit of your stomach every day.
Yeah.
Something bad's going to happen. Somebody's going to say no. Okay, they always say no, but you never get used to it. Um, but when you're dealing with a hyperscaler, as opposed to having a direct relationship with you or having a relationship with you through a distributor, when you deal with a hyperscaler, not only are you inviting another potential competitor because they are competing against all of us at the same time, but
Yeah.
you're all now exposing a customer to a third party that now has the ability to market down to them for somebody else. How do you get over that risk exposure? Or how did you do that?
Yeah, I think, depending on, the account, it's still there sometimes, right? And,
Mhm.
just like any of one of our companies, whether we're a partner, ISV, or AWS, depending on which account salesperson you get, the experience can be different, every time.
Mhm.
Hopefully not, right? Like that's what we do a lot of enablement for and coaching on. But I think it's w- building the trust and kind of, especially in the initial standpoint, walking hand in hand with the sales team through the process and guiding them. Because a lot of times, if they haven't done the sales motion before with the hyperscalers, they don't know what to listen for. They don't know what to watch for. They don't know the questions to ask necessarily. And so can go sideways. But, having my co-sell team there side by side with them to kind of guide them through the process has helped alleviate some of those challenges. Now, we've also had to do a lot of education internally, to our site sales leaders, because we get the question, or I got the question a lot, which is, you know, and this goes for the value added resellers, it goes for AWS, Microsoft, it goes, they're not exclusive to us, or can they be exclusive to us? And the answer, of course, is no. That situation is never going to happen. What we can do on our part, though, is be the easiest to work with, provide the most value, provide a fantastic product that the sellers want to sell, and then be in tune with the market and what the market is asking for. And if you are all those things, then you're going to rise above your competition in most cases, right? And the seller's going to want to work with you more than your competition too.
All right. So that's a great handoff to something I wanted to ask from the beginning of this. I'm going to share this as well because I was talking with a salesperson, and it's not too long ago, and I said, they know everybody knows the adage. It takes it takes money to make money. And I said, well, there's another side of that. Money makes money. So
Yeah.
you put money in something, it will make money. As I'm looking at you, and I'm saying, okay, you've reached this $1 billion milestone. Is that drawing more attention towards you? It's like this level of success is getting more to pay attention to New Relic and say, I can do that with you now. More partners come to the table, more customers come to the table. Is that momentum carrying you forward and actually lifting you higher?
Yeah, absolutely. It's the snowball effect, right? And when people see the success and see that, there is, uh, the capability is there, there's absolutely more focus on it. And hence why I'm now in this new global co-sell role is we're doubling down there too. And my team, small but mighty team, is busier than ever coming out of our SKO, because the big focus is we're doubling down with marketplace with the hyperscalers, right? Because we know the value, we know the opportunity. And so my message to my team was like, buckle up and get ready, because we're going to be extremely busy over the next year. Be good job security, right?
I hope so. I mean, I, I do want to, I do want to be, I want to come back to this because I'm going to prep you is about, I want to know what went wrong. But before we get to that, let's talk a little, briefly about this global team you put together in co-selling. What's that like? What are you trying to, are you just trying to build on this momentum, or are you also trying to export this and trying to replicate it in other parts of the world where it may not already exist?
Yeah, that's a good question. So, typically, as we all know, per geo is very different. APJ is different than LATAM, then is different than North America. So, yes, taking the lessons learned and the success in some areas of the globe and replicating those others, but also leaning in more and more closely aligned with our sales leadership team. I've always felt this very passionately from being a sales leader and being a channel leader is that they're one and the same. Now we do different, a little bit different motions on a day-to-day basis, but we are 100% on the same team and should be in constant lockstep on how we're going to market and supporting each other. And so this global alignment allows us to be tighter with our global sales leaders and all of our geo sales leaders, strategically building out like what this motion looks like per geo, per country in a lot of cases too. And so I think that's going to be a big benefit is just being more in sync with sales.
Yeah. All right, let's get to that big question. So, what went wrong? What wall did you run into?
It's going to go back to my operations, right? And so, we did not, when I first came here, we did not have operations set up the right way. And it was inhibitor for us for sure. And I think even historically, if you look at, where New Relic was before I came on board, it was very much a mindset of, it's New Relic and we're going to control the opportunity and we're not asking about the ecosystem as much as we should be. And all of those things, fixing operations, starting to change that culture, getting the AEs to think holistically about the customer, that has been what has gotten us to this point. And I think even frankly, like is what's going to get us to the next billion much quicker than we got to the first.
All right, so let's go out on that question. So a year from now, I'm gonna, actually, I'll do it right after the start of your fiscal next year. I'll reach out to you and say, all right, Shannon, what's changed and what's going to change next? Where do you see this going next?
We've been talking a lot about it with our AWS team. And of course, we can't get through a podcast these days without saying something about AI, right? And
We
how can
almost made it.
I know we
We
almost made it,
almost
but
made it.
it's so true though. So that's what I've been building out is specifically internally for my team, right? We're a small team compared to our sales team. How can we leverage AI to co-sell better? How can we
Mm,
leverage AI to be more productive internally, right? And so that's how I think it's going to change over the next year. And taking like our operations things that we have put in place and leveraging AI for us to be smarter about how we co-sell with AWS. That's why I feel very confident that we'll be able to get to the next billion with AWS much quicker than we got to the first because we're going to be able to have the tools in place. We have the culture in place. We have the operations in place now to really drive this forward. So I'm excited to see what the next year can bring.
very good. Well, look, I lied. I have one more question. Is
Okay.
that again, talking to your peers,
Mhm.
there's there are a number of companies that are doing as well as you are with the hyperscalers. There are many that are struggling to figure it out, and there's even more out there trying to start their journey.
Mhm.
What's one bit of advice you'd give them about finding success in co-selling with hyperscalers?
Yeah. So I think for me, it's been my partnership with my co-build team and my co-market team, right? Internally, I think that the co-market, co-build, and myself were in lockstep with how we want to handle this relationship, and everybody's bought into the co-sell motion. So that would be a huge piece of advice: is to make sure that we've got strong connection between all three of those because AWS, Microsoft sees us as one, right? And how can we bring value in all of those parts of the situation?
Very good. Shannon, thanks so much for joining us here in Changing Channels. It's been a pleasure talking with you.
It's been fantastic. Thanks, Larry.
Well, that's about all the time we have for this edition of Changing Channels. Again, I want to thank our guest, Shannon Batson, the Director of Channel Sales and Head of the AWS Co-Sell Program at New Relic, for joining us. And as always, I want to thank all of you. We do Changing Channels to help everybody understand what's happening out there in the market and the broader channel so that we can learn from each other and make the channel a better place for everyone. If you like what we're doing here at Changing Channels, please hit like, hit subscribe, tell your friends. Also check out our other podcasts, The Network Effect and In the Margins, as well as check out all the great best practices, content, products, and services we offer at Channelnomics. Until next time, I'm Larry Walsh.